that time, because, you know, like Charles said, when we growed up, they wasn't many good paying jobs. And I live in Torrance, California. I loved it out there. Till they had one earthquake and I was ready to come back. If you've never been in one, and the house starts moving, you want to head for the doorway, something to hold on to. I mean, it's kind of scary. But anyway, I come back here, and then I worked in restaurants again as manager, and I stayed about 2 years, and I left that and went to Dayco. I worked 25 years at Dayco and retired. And then when I retired, I thought we was through with my wife. We cleaned houses for about 10, 12 years, and her. And I'm going to tell you, these women, these men, you would appreciate a woman that does house cleaning. It's not an easy job, because I found out it's hard. And when they go out and work all day long, take care of the children, come home and cook, and then have to do the housework. You men should appreciate it.
Amen, brother.
Because I have done it all. I have cooked, I have raised my kids, and you know, it's hard sometimes. But God has been good, and I really appreciate all you people seeing you again, and I hope I see you again. God bless you.
Joyce, would you get the next person, please?
Kenneth.
I'm Kenneth Gibson, and I doubt if any of you know me, but anyway, I stayed 4 years in the Navy, 33 years at Dayco. I left Dayco and went to Morganton. I went to Broughton and it was full, so I applied for the state job and I got to work, and they sent me to prison, and I worked 15 years and retired from the state, from the DPS. And like I say, I appreciate all you people, but I've got something and a lot of you don't have. I've got memories of 58 every day, because I married my beautiful wife, one of our classmates, in 1963. We've been married 54 years. And I love all of you, and thank you.
Well, now, would your better half like to say something too?
Oh, I've got a lot to say. I've not done a lot of traveling like all you people have, and been all the places you have, but I've been blessed with one son and 2 wonderful granddaughters, and I've graduated to being a granddaughter. And I run errands, I run to soccer practice, I run to cheerleading, I go to everything. But our older granddaughter's 20 now, and she's in her last year in nursing, and she's doing well, and she says she's going to keep going until she gets to the top. So we're proud of her too. And the little one, no one knows. She's 11. I don't know what she may do. But they're saving room for me other problems for living with them.
Thank you, Miss Ann. All right, who's next?
No.
And I came back and graduated with this class. I was in military school for 3 years, and I came back. I went to Waynesville High before that, and then I was in military school for 3 years and came back and graduated with this bunch here and everything. And I went on and I got married to Barbara here. Been married 58 years. We have 3 children. We have 5 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. And I'm in the heating and air conditioning business. I'm sort of semi-retired, and my son and my daughter and my granddaughter actually run the business for us. And I've just been here in Waynesville for
I thought I was from Waynesville. No, it's good to be here to see all these faces. A lot of them I didn't know, and I know you didn't know me. But, you know, we lived in a time that when we come up, everything was fine. We didn't have no shooting in the schools and stuff like it is now. If you've got kids now, I'd be afraid to send one to school. But no, we live in a country that needs prayer. It needs dedicated people to stand up for what it is, what we stood up, what our teachers stood for. You know, mostly they need the Lord. If they had him, we wouldn't have all this. And two, I'm proud to graduate from Waynesville. I married a girl from Pittsburgh. That come out good. I said, when we play at Canton, I'll sit on your side. When you come to Waynesville, you're going to sit on my side. I got killed down in Canton, the only person over there stood up. You know, I worked at DACO for 44 years. A lot of good people we miss. I miss a lot of sisters and brothers we graduated with. You know, a lot of them gone. I can remember a lot of names. We're big proud of them. Always took care of us this long. 60 years married, 78 years old. Thank you, Lord. But it's good for everyone that I say here. Thank you.
We haven't heard from one of our other co-chairmen, Joe. It's time for you to tell us what you've been up to.
Well, Ralph, you know, at least for the graduates, we know how old you are, right? We know about how old we are. So, one thing I'd like to take care of for that we might forget, we're doing this, and we have a Facebook page if you'd like to keep more in touch. It's WTHS 1958. Love to have everybody join that if you would. Also, if nobody has any objections about us putting the video, some of this stuff on YouTube, when we were doing the pictures and stuff, I got to think about, well, what about the copyright? And my wife said, well, the annual is published by the graduating class, so we own the copyright, so we don't have to worry about anything like that. So unless anybody has any objection, I mean, if you do, tell us, but it's wonderful what you can see. Then you don't have to pay anything if you got access to a computer, and if you don't, your grandkids do. And they'll tell you how to do it. So if that's okay with everybody, we'll be doing that. It won't cost you nothing. You can see it anytime you want to for memories. Marianne said to go back 20 years. I think some of us have to go back 60 years. Some of us hadn't touched Carol. Carol Hooper here said he hadn't seen me in 60 years, and that's probably some of us haven't seen each other. But going back to that, I feel like that I need to tell you what has molded and shaped my life in the last 60 years. But before I do that, I'd like to go back to high school, and unless you really had a lot of classes with me or something, you may not even remember me from high school. So maybe you don't, I'm not asking you, but you may not even remember. But I was probably shy, reserved. I had never thought much about it. But you remember, we had to have 16 credits to graduate, right? When I was a freshman, I took 5 credits. So on that, that meant in the senior year, I could get by with just taking 3. But I signed up for 4, and one was a math class that I didn't have to have. Remember Mrs. Leatherwood, Lawrence Leatherwood's wife? She was so sweet. I would go in that class and take me a book, and I'd read it. And everybody else did everything else, and I didn't do anything. And it came up time to give out grades, and she came to me and she said, "Joe, I don't know, I have to fail you." And I said, "Sure, I ain't done anything." I mean, I couldn't understand why she's so, but she was so, whatever that word is, but she was such a sweet person. And so we agreed together that instead of her giving me an F, I would just drop out of the class. And so the senior year, I finished up classes at 12:15 or 12:30, something like that. I had 3 hours to sit in the library and read library books, which I did. And so I think my unspoken or unthought of goal in high school was to get a high school diploma with the least possible effort. Just to do the minimum I could. And back then, those days, you could, because they would pass you if you just showed up and didn't cut up. So, now, Billy Bruce, I don't know. But it was a good time. But when I was 20, I was kind of like Gail here. I was 20, I got shot in a hunting accident, and I really wasn't hurt very bad, but I thought I was going to die. And that causes you to think if you ever run into it. But I thought I was going to die, and as a result of that long story, I came to know God, and He introduced me to Jesus Christ, and that really did shape and mold my life from then. It made me a more outgoing person, more interested in people and cared about people. But one of the things it did is change me gave me a hunger for knowledge. And so I did working part-time. I did go on to college at part-time from Western Carolina, and I actually completed up through junior year, and I had in comparison to what you've done, this is nothing, but I had about a B+. Now that's not much, but for something for somebody that didn't do anything in high school, and to change like that. In fact, I think in high school, I remember taking books home two times. And I don't know if I did any homework then or not. But anyway, that really changed my life, and it was great. I highly recommend it. It's great. It really changed me into a different person. Well, that's what it's supposed to do. We had a son and a daughter. We lost our daughter to cancer at age 44 in 2010. She gave us wonderful granddaughters, 2 of which we raised for about 7 years, and they're moved out now. And so it's been good. Like Ralph said, we lived in a wonderful time, in a wonderful country. We have much to be thankful for. Thank you.
I see Phyllis and Paul coming in. Come on in and have a seat. We are the program folks, so be thinking about what you're going to say when it's your turn. All right, let's hear from, let's hear from somebody who used to drive his desk in typing. He would change gears on his typing table. And he knows who he is, and we're going to ask him to tell us about what he and Isla have been doing. Melbourne Knight.
All I ate, and my sister tells me this, all I ate, sleep, and drank motorcycles. That's all I thought about. And then, of course, you know, as soon as school was out, I left out the next morning going to Montana to my sister's to stay on the ranch all summer. And then, after I've been there all summer, we start back, and I turned into a jailbird. Oh, wow. Now, you want to know something that they didn't know about. So what happened, I wanted to go down through when I left the ranch up in Montana. I said, I've got to go down and see Fort Laramie, Wyoming, because you don't see that on some of these old Western TVs. So I go on down and see Fort Laramie, and then I go in, just get into Nebraska, Mitchell, Nebraska. And, you know, you couldn't do this nowadays. I had a sleeping bag, and I camped out, had a little Sterno canned heat stove that I cooked on, and it wouldn't be safe to do that now. But anyway, I was kind of looking for a place to camp. And so when I get into Mitchell, it's a small little town, and this cop is there on the side talking to somebody. And so I pull up and asked him, I said, is there a good place to camp around here? And he said, well, said there's a campground out here. You won't stay in that. It's not really safe. But he said, we have got a brand new fire department and jail and all that stuff. And he said, I'll let you stay in one of these cells if you want to. And you know, I said, man, that sounds good to me. So he comes in, rolls the door up, and there's a big, nice new fire truck, and I roll my bike in there, don't have to unpack it or anything. And he goes in there and gets me a nice new blanket, and this is a brand new jail. And he said, I'm going to lock you up, and said, yeah, we'll let you out at 7 in the morning. So I said, man, that's great. So then they did do that, but that was my night in jail. So then I come on back home. But, you know, I rode a motorcycle, and that was it. And then then I went back to school, and y'all, these guys know that I was good friends with Tom Scott, the industrial arts teacher. And so I worked with him and stayed around school. And then I got a Jimmy Man, and they bought my Indian. And so I had to get something else, so I had a new BSA. So then I took it to Montana and stayed all summer. But then I met Isla. And that kind of took a little bit of the polish off of motorcycles. But anyway, and as a matter of fact, we took our honeymoon to Florida. My mother still had a house down there then, and so we rode the motorcycle down to Florida on our honeymoon and rode up and down the beach and all that stuff, had a good time. And as a matter of fact, this was back 61, and we saw President Kennedy. He always come in down at Palm Beach, and we got to see him come through. And but anyway, after that, I got to working at the American Inca factory, and so then worked a couple of years at Daco, and you know, they had a lot of them layoffs, so I went back to Inca State, and then first thing you know, I got laid off over there. So then I started driving an 18-wheeler. And so then, and this goes back, I guess I got it from driving a school bus, because I like to travel. And I'd done a lot, because I went with my mother and dad back in 53 in an 049 pickup. We went to Montana. And I love to travel. And so that truck driving was something, you know, you get to see the country. So then after I drove for a good while, then I got Isla hooked on it and got her to driving. And sometimes we'd take 2 trucks, and we got to see the 48 states. And I told her when we'd be in one of them big trucks with a sleeper, I said, now we're just like old people in motorhome. But I said, we're getting paid for it. So, and I didn't realize now we are old people. But we had fun. And then you know, I guess that little motorcycle bug was still in there somewhere. And so then when my son gets big enough to ride, well, then we get back into it. And so then my son and myself, we went a couple of trips to Canada and back and done a bunch of riding several different places and, you know, got into that. And then, and that's sometime while I was in between the truck driving stuff, you know. But then eventually, and I love that truck. And here's something about driving an 18-wheeler. If you drove long enough, they say you get hooked on that diesel fumes. That's just the saying. But what happens? When you sleep at night, sometimes you're not sleeping good. You're getting these truck driving dreams, and you're always going down a hill, and you're hitting the brakes, and it don't do it. Slow down. But anyway, so then about 12 years ago, I had this chance to go to the Boston Mountain Preserve as a security guard. So that's where I've been the last 12 years, and it's a little bit better suited for somebody that's pushing 80. But I'll tell you, one of the best things happened to me now, and that was the best thing, I guess, was in 1966, I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and that was great time. And it's been wonderful ever since. And so then, when Al and myself got out of the truck driving, we got into the going around and she sings, songwrites, and so now we get to travel more now in several states, spreading the gospel in song and testimony. But anyhow, this is the first reunion I've been to, and most of these people, I haven't seen them in 60 years, and I mean, all these people surely need, these kids were teenagers when I saw them. And I guess that, you know, they'd have to kind of look on my card to see who I was. But it's really been great, and I love being here. I mean, it's really been good.
Well, speaking of Shirley, let's hear what Shirley. She has one of those personalities that she just kind of fades into the woodwork.
I'm fading right now.
Come up and tell us what you've been doing, Shirley. I know you've been really involved in your new church.
Gosh, where do I start?
At the beginning.
At the beginning. Okay. All right, when we graduated, I went to Stetson University for a year doing secretarial science. And I got down there and I did lots of other things besides secretarial. I had to do history, and I had to do sociology, and I had to read Lord Jim and Heart of Darkness and all that crazy stuff. I didn't care anything about. But I came home that summer, and I went into the law business, working for attorneys, and that's what I have been doing since then. I did go home and stay about 23 years with the children, but in 1989, I went back into the law business. And then in 1998, I went out on my own and I freelance and I hire out to attorneys to do title work. And I'm still doing it. I'm not retiring. I don't want to retire. You retire, no, I don't want to do that. So, we've been married 58 years. 3 children and 4 grandchildren. One daughter's next door, one's across the street, and the son's 2 miles away. So we have lots of family together time, which we love. And that's about it, guys. That's about, I've not had a very, and our new church is Encouraging Word Baptist Church, located out on Pigeon Road. We're 7 years old, and we're up to about 120 members now, and it's fantastic. It is the greatest place. It's just It's just a great place. It really is. So anyway, if you don't go anywhere, come on out.
Where is Lloyd Allen? I can't see to the back of the room, folks, so. Lloyd, tell us, you've been a big help on this committee. So tell us what you've been into for the past 20 years.
It's good to see someone here. A lot of you I hadn't seen in 60 years. But I've spent my whole life here in Wayne County. And I'm married to Carol Bryson from Silva back in 1966. And worked at the mountain here all the way through high school, put myself through high school, supporting my mother. And put my way through high school, worked at the mountain here for 31 years. It sold out and got rid of all of us eventually. Went to work at Speedy Print and 7.5 years there. And that didn't work out too good. It was a new sales transaction there. So I started my own business, old style printing, right below the post office, ran it for 14 years, and merged in with the print house and sold out to him, merged in. I'm still sort of affiliated with the print house and the printing business, but I retired about a year ago because I started having some problems with my leg and I just couldn't get around like I used to when I was a teenager, so I had to slow down a little bit and wound up with one of these walking sticks to sort of support me a little bit. In 1983, I accepted the call to preach the gospel, and I've been preaching the gospel since then. My first church was in Bryson City for 3.5 years, Canton, High Street in Canton for 3.5 years, and I've been at Richmond Baptist Church now as pastor for going on 15 years. And that's pretty much, we've got 2 daughters, no grandchildren, and I don't have to worry about all the world getting like it is, that I've got grandchildren now to grow up in it, but I'll pray for all yours. And we'll pray for you, and it's good to see you, and God bless each one of you.
Thank you, Lloyd. And the programs, I did the typing on them, but Lloyd's the one who physically did the program. And he's the one we should thank for our commencement programs. This tickled me to see this because I had not kept one. So Lloyd ran these off for us just exactly the way they were in 1958.
Those were printed 60 years ago.
Oh, you had these?
I'll have them.
Waiting for a class reunion. So we're glad that you brought those to us. I'll tell you a little bit about what I've been doing for the past 20 years. I was with DACO for 37 years, and I was one of the last 900 to go out. They had a deal where they would pay us a right good sized bonus if we'd stay and help them shut it down. Well, I live in the house I grew up in, which is not a whole lot to say about somebody who was elected the most likely to succeed in the class. But I wanted to stay in that house, so I took them up on the bonus. And when I left the plant, when the plant closed, I went into the hospitality field and worked for 8 years at the Inn on Biltmore Estate. And it was fun and I loved it, but my knees started telling on me, so I had to quit doing that. I did at that time work for the Waynesville Mountaineer. I still do as a freelance writer. I don't do as much as I used to. I was also elected county commissioner and served 2 4-year terms. Of course, I had been mayor of Hazelwood for 15 years. Ronnie and I were elected in the same election. He was elected mayor of Waynesville, I was elected mayor of Hazelwood, and the newspaper did a nice story on that. Two people from the class of 1958, and it was fun. And of course, I had to do the hardest thing that I've ever had to do in my life, and that was to merge the towns. I did. It was the right thing to do. It's working out beautifully, and I am writing a book about it, because it'll never be done in North Carolina the way that it was done at that time. Ronnie's shaking his head here. Through all this, I have continued to be an organist and choir director at rural Methodist churches. This is my 60th year doing that. And I'm so grateful to God that I still have the fingers to do it, that I still have the eyes, and sometimes I still have the mind. Well, I guess the thing that I'm proud to know, it's the second thing I'm proudest of in my newspaper career. A couple of years ago, I won the North Carolina Press Association's first place award for a front page story I wrote on local government, and just how it works and how it's so different from how people think that it works. So I was real pleased about that. But the thing that meant the most to me was during President Obama's administration, the White House contacted me and asked me if I wanted White House press credentials.
Oh, wow.
And yes, wow, from a little old girl from Main Street, Hazelwood, that's pretty eye-cotton, folks. I'm sorry, but it was. So I still work some. About 3 or 4 years ago, I cover arts and cover bluegrass music, although I'm a classically trained musician. I love bluegrass music, and I covered that for the paper. I was listening to a street concert about 3 years ago when I collapsed and just fell flat on my face. And it was determined that within 48 hours I had to have 5 emergency bypasses. Did not know I was sick, didn't have any idea I was sick, but I dodged a bullet, and God has always been important to me in my life, and did I ever more know it then, because I'm fine, folks, as far as I know. So this is what I've been doing. I still paint some. I've traveled, as June and some of you have. I went back, I've been to Europe about 6 or 7 times. That's why I have no money. I don't have 15 cents. But I've had a good time. I've had a good time. Now, I'm going to tell you something that you don't know about. I'm going to do what June said we had to do. I'm going to tell you, do you remember when the Supreme Court decided that all Rotary clubs had to admit women? Well, we had some folks here in Waynesville who quit because of that. But at any rate, a slate of women was proposed for the Waynesville Rotary Club. 3 women were on the slate to be proposed, to be voted on. I was one of those 3, an attorney in town. And I never did ask. But one day he and I were having lunch, and he said, I'm going to tell you something that I'm not supposed to tell you. But he said, I think it's so funny, I have to tell you. I said, okay. He said, your name didn't even get out of committee. He said, you are considered too controversial. Folks, I loved it.
Yes.
And I have worn that as a badge of honor ever since then. Too controversial for the Waynesville Rotary Club. I just think that's wonderful. So I hope that's on my tombstone. I've already told you about my daughter. Some of you knew both my sisters. They are younger than I have lost them both. And I didn't intend to be the last one standing. But apparently God's got something else for me to do. Thank you very much.